aspetta 30 minuti. Como dice José Luis, voy a hacer la conferencia en inglés porque mi español no está mucho bien, lo entiendo, but no lo hablo very bien. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Denis Friedman. I'm a producer. I've been producing animation for about, 16, 17 years. And before that, I've been producing video games for about 15 years, so I'm actually very old. You don't see, but I'm actually very, very old. And I'm going to talk to you about one of the projects I'm producing right now, which I'm co-producing with Canada and potentially other countries like Belgium and Italy. What I will specifically talk about today, because maybe some of you know a little bit about the project, and I have to apologize because you're going to see, if you have ever seen the project on the internet, you're going to see something that maybe you know. But so I will try to focus my presentation on the transmedia strategy, on how we integrate all the various medias in the project. So you will have more a focus on how we start from an idea, which is a TV series, and how we expand it globally over the beautiful transmedia world. Okay, so let me give you a brief history of how I came into the project. It was, I think, 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago. I was sitting on the beach in Corsica, if I remember, and I had my computer, and as a producer, I received many, many projects. I have people sending me like every week, can you have a look at that, and do you like what I'm doing and everything? And I usually try to look at everything that has been sent to me, and this time I received an email from a guy and say, I'm a good friend of a guy that I've been working with, which was a very good designer. So I looked at the mail and said, okay, if he's a good friend of a good designer, maybe he does good design. And they say, can you have a look at our work? Because we're looking for a producer to develop the property. I know it's not an easy property. And so I actually click on the link of the little pilot that he sent me, and I'm going to show you what I actually saw, maybe. So on my beach on Corsica, I looked at that and I said, that might be interesting. So I said, can you actually send me the story? And the idea at the beginning was the idea they had was to do a TV series. And obviously they didn't know anything about the market, because doing a TV series talking about sex, violence for adult people, which is an expensive one because we're talking about traditional animation. I say, guys, it's going to be very difficult to do, because I don't know if you know about it, but no TV channels in Europe are buying that and broadcasting that. You have a few in the US and a few in Asia, but looking at the style, what we want to do and the quality, it's going to be impossible to finance the usual way, which is more or less focused to preschool project and other type of project. And I said, okay, I'm really interested about what you guys are doing, so we have to find another way to actually find money and finance this property. And so if you trust me, we're going to develop together the strategy, which is how to create the property, and actually it's very close to what you've been hearing from BRB this morning and from the various conferences, because this is a case study that more or less is exactly the example of, let's hope, what we have to do to make a property like a brand and to actually create a community that people really are behind the property and are ready to pay and help you finance the thing. So let me go to the presentation itself. I hope I'll be able to put it in full screen if I understand my Spanish correctly. No, it's not that. Hello, bye-bye. So you go to ver and modo pantanella completa. That's it? Great. My Spanish is not that bad. Okay. So Urbance, what it is all about. So what I'll do is I'll start to talk to you about the story, and you will understand. I hope you don't have any kids in the room, because it's not for really kids. You will understand why it is so difficult to finance it the proper way. And then I'll talk to you about what we've been developing, where we're at right now, and what we're in the progress of developing so far. This is exactly what I'm going to talk to you about. You know, we started as a TV series. I will go to that scheme later on, but just to understand, we actually started from one little block here, and this is what the whole project is all about now. And I will go into not all the details, but I'll explain to you the whole strategy. But this is it. This is the secret of the project, basically. Let's go back. Okay, so as I said, the project was actually concepted by a studio in Canada, which actually was founded by two French guys. Called Steamboat Studio, which is actually a design studio. They're doing, what you see here are all the properties they've been working on, and they're doing concept art for big Hollywood movies and big video game companies and everything, and they were kind of getting tired of working for other people, and they decided I want to actually do my own thing, and this is where they contacted me 2 years ago to actually build the property. Who am I? I've been, as I said, I'll go very briefly on that one, but I've been producing animation for about 15 years, producing mostly feature films. I actually produced one of the first CGI feature movie in Europe. I think the first one was Spanish, actually. I think I was the second one, to be very honest, which was called Kaena, The Prophecy, which released, I think, in 2001 or something like that. Then I've been producing feature film for about 15 years, and also shorts, and I'm also doing live action and documentaries, but most of my activity is producing animation, basically. So the project started, as I said, by a story about a TV series. So let me give you a little brief update of the story, which is actually the pitch is actually very simple. You imagine in the near future, which is 10, 15 years from now, there is a virus that infected the whole population of the Earth. And that virus has a simple effect, is every time you have sex, you die. But you don't die in 3 weeks, and you don't die in a month, you just die immediately. So like 10 seconds after, you die, which is kind of a problem. I don't know if you guys understand the issue, but it's kind of a problem. It's not a world that I want to live in, you know. But it's actually an interesting topic, you know, what happened in a world where you cannot have sex, basically. So one of the things to prevent sex is actually to separate men from women, even though you still have homosexual sex and you die out of it, but you actually try to prevent the whole thing. So the society we're imagining in the future is where men and women are totally, fully separated. They're raised more or less in the hate of each other, because and you have gangs that are actually building out of that, and the babies are actually, you know, test tube babies, and the whole thing is controlled by kind of a very strong entity, which you're going to see some of the thing. And so the story is actually a very simple story. It's like a Romeo and Juliet story, which is basically one of the gang members on the men's side will fall in love with one of the gang members on the women's side, and maybe their story will actually change the world. That will be in season 3 or 4, so I will not do the spoilers for you. You won't know how it will happen. But, and just to give you some comparison of the storytelling, we're very close to TV series like Sons of Anarchy, not Breaking Bad because of the story Breaking Bad, but we're talking a lot about drugs, because one of the things that you can find in this society is because you cannot have sex, but you still have the desire of have sex. So there's a drug that actually circulates that simulate orgasm, because actually the fact that you die is created by the level of endorphin that is in your brain. So if the endorphins go too high, you actually die. So that drug simulates orgasm. So it's very useful, but it's also a lot of trafficking, because the people that control the drug control the whole thing that happened in the city, and everything is around that. You know, the gangs, the love stories, and all the various ideas. I'm going to show you some of the designs, but very very fast. And if you want to see more, you can go on the website and you have access of all the information. Don't hesitate to do that. So these are some of the sets. We are in a city which is very North American, but we don't really know where it is. It could be New York, Montreal, or it's more a North American city than a European one. But it has some Asian influence also. So it's I would say a Blade Runner-ish type of city. So gender wars. And as you can see in terms of graphic style, this is one of the main reasons I went into that, because in a way it's very classy and everything. We're using, just for your information about technique, we're using 2D animation and CG background repainted, so it's really a hybrid type of a production. These are the police squad, basically. They have actually no sex. They're like eunuchs. Eunuchs or something, yeah, something like that. But there's also a backstory behind them. All that. Okay, these are the two main characters, Kenzel and Leisha. Oh, by the way, for your information, the guy that did the music on the pilot that you heard is Ed Banger. He used to be the former manager of Daft Punk. And the music is very important in the story, because the main hero, which is Kenzel, is a DJ. He's like a hero, star DJ of the world. And the girl, which is a gang member, we learn in the series that she's not like a usual girl that she's actually, because you have I'm going to give you a little spoiler, so I'm sorry, don't repeat everything what I said, you're not allowed to, but a few people in the society are allowed to have children, and not using the test tube, and she's actually the daughter of the lead girl that leads. But we don't know that until the end of the season 1. But the fact is that you realize that she's still special because people are following her, try to catch her and everything. So it's like important information. These are the gangs, and now let's go back. I'm sorry, I'm passing pretty fast, but you can have access to all that information. Just some references of if some of you knows animation, some references of some, obviously, series or games that we could be related to, Redline, Motor City, Tron Uprising, Freedom Project, and obviously Jet Set Radio in terms of video games and stuff like that. Okay, so now, how it started. It started with that little teaser that you saw. We actually posted that on the internet, having about 500,000 views on YouTube. And we started to build up a community of people, you know, more or less teasing them with the story and say, we want to do something, but we know it's not going to be easy to finance. So the first idea that we did was to say, okay, let's focus on the community that was existing, which was about 12,000 people on Facebook. Overall, when you combine the Twitter, the Tumblr, you know, all the actual followers, it was about 150, 160,000 people. So we said, let's use that community and see how they react to what they're proposing. And for us, the first thing we did was to organize a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter, which opened on September 26th or October, yeah, close to end of September. And to actually, the idea, the official idea was to raise funds for the pilot, because we wanted to find the money for the pilot, which is a very common thing to do on the crowdfunding. But actually, this was just the official idea. The real idea behind that was to actually use that campaign. It was kind of a big bet, you know. It was kind of, let's use that campaign to actually focus on the community, to expand the knowledge on the community. It was like a marketing gig. But more than that is to get information on who is really interested, who is ready to pay for things, and what type of things they're ready to pay for. So we had a big chunk. You can still go on Kickstarter and have a look at the things that we're selling, but we had a big chunk of things, going from virtual things to real items to what I call personification, to many things. And we learned a lot out of that campaign. Just for your information, I did something which I rarely do, and I was actually pretty scared. because we did a marketing study, and this is something I like to tell. We did a marketing study on pilot for animation TV series on Kickstarter, how much money they usually raise. And the average was about $70,000, between $70,000 and $80,000 per series. And that was exactly our target. We said, okay, we're going to put that as a target. And 24 hours before starting the campaign, I said, let's stop that. If we want to deliver the message, we have to put it a lot higher than that, because we don't want to be, in the crowd of other people doing it. I don't know if you know, but you have about 6,000 campaigns at a certain date, certain time every, if you go on the internet right now, you have about 6,000 campaigns going. So, when you're launching one, you better know if you want to catch your people, you better be sure that you catch them. So I said, okay, let's put the thing a lot higher. I know it's risky, because we will take the risk of not reaching the thing, but if we go and if we pass the goal, people will hear about it. So I actually said, okay, let's put it to $180,000. And they looked at me and said, are you sure what you're doing? Oh, well, I don't know, I'm sure I've never did it. It's my first campaign, but let's try it, and I talked to my people that really knew how to do it. And by the way, we found a wonderful guy in Poland that is probably the best community manager ever that I would find. And he came to 3D-Wire in March. And believe me, for 45 days I was freaking out, because I was absolutely not sure it would happen. For your information, on Kickstarter, on crowdfunding campaign, you have 3 phases, what I call, the initial phase of the first week, which is you reach your core audience, the people that already know about what you have, what you're doing. These guys, you reach them, they put the money, and so the first week you're very happy because it goes, and then poof, it stops. And it stopped for about 3 weeks, and it really stopped. It's just like, and you're just like scared. And everything happens in the last 3 days. For your information, we raised $230,000. Out of the 230, 100 was raised in the last 3 days. And the thing is that, well, 2 things happen. I don't know if you know, but if you do crowdfunding, you can get called. You can say, I'm interested in that campaign. Call me at the end of it, and maybe I will put some money on it. So we know that we have that effect of the last bidders. But also, you have to reach the outside audience. You're really successful when you reach people that don't know anything about what you're doing. These are people that are outside. They might be slightly interested about animation or I don't know, adult themes or stuff like that. But it's people that are just like common people that are reached by the information. And they're reached by the information about several ways, about newspapers, articles, and stuff like that. So we organized our campaign to be sure that most of the word was going out at that last week of the campaign. For your information, we had about 4 people working on the campaign full-time. It took us about 6 months to actually prepare the campaign and 45 days to actually do. Actually, I think it was a mistake. Next time I would do a 30 days campaign, because 45 days it's tough to keep the attention for 45 days on the internet. And the result of that is that we were actually, as I said, pretty successful. Oh yeah, this is interesting. This is the fan art, which existed before the campaign. We actually on the Facebook page, and people actually were dressing like the characters, even though we didn't have any series, no stories to tell, just the pilot that you saw. But this is when we started to realize that there was something going on. If people start doing cosplay on something that does not exist, might be that we're reaching something. Before I go into the details of the campaign, this is the information we had before the campaign on the actual Facebook people that were following the page. And very interestingly enough, we knew that it was very North American because it's outside of Canada and the story was, but what we really didn't know is that on the 1625 it was more women than men, which for us was a kind of a big surprise, because we felt it was a very male thing. And actually we had 2 explanations for that. Maybe because of the love story, but also because of the classy, the style which appeals to people that really love how to dress, and it's really, I would say it's really hype, and that might be one of the reasons. Another reason, it's kind of a surprise also, but what you can see on that is that it reversed. After the 25, it's actually more male than women. We used all that information, and we build up our campaign on that. This is what I'll detail the 360 platform strategy after I go through the campaign. Okay, we started building the community. The idea was really to cut the community. So we started from the Facebook page and the Twitter and Tumblr, and we extended that to the whole, as many networks as possible. Pinterest was a big one. So we really wanted to use as many networks as possible. So we had people to go onto all those networks to activate them. Then, as I said, the Kickstarter goal was $180,000. We raised 230. First day we did 10,000. I'm just going to details a little bit about the Kickstarter campaign. Second day, something going on. I pressed the wrong button, maybe. Second day, Animation Magazine on their website put us as the campaign to see. It's very important to have access to the people the normal way, and not only count on the internet, but have access to people that read magazines and stuff like that, to extend it. And actually, the last week of the campaign, we have access to magazines like Huffington Post, like professional magazines, which was very important for them. Day 4, we are very lucky because we were selected as what we call the Kickstarter staff pick, which is very important because then you go to the front page of Kickstarter, and they actually, you can ask for it, but it's actually a selection. It's something that is really, it's the project that they really like. So when you reach that, it's a level of recognition which is bad, which is really good. On the 5th day, we started to realize exactly what people were ready to buy because some of the items were gone in 5 days. Like we actually did a special edition of the art book, which you can see here, and you'll be welcome to have a look at it. That special edition went out in 3.5 days. We realized, when we analyzed the campaign, we realized 2 things really worked very well. One thing, which is the art thing, which is the books and the collectible toys and the really limited edition things, and the virtual personification. Okay, let me explain. In the campaign, we had 3 levels or several levels of personification. One of that level was very simple. You could pay $150 and you could have your name tag on a wall in the TV series, So on some of the shots, as it's very urban type of thing, you have a lot of tags. So you send your name, we'll do a urban version of your name, and we'll tag it on the wall. You can use that. We'll send you the GIF, and you can use that on your Facebook page and everything. So it's one, it goes on the other side because one way we're getting the money, and the other way we are helping the advertising of the person. But on top of that, we had people, if they paid $5,000, they can have their face in the TV series. And this is an example. We had 3 people doing that, which don't seem a lot, but for me, it's unbelievable. I would never pay $5,000 to be characters. Oops, problem with water. Sorry about that. To be a character in the TV series. So for us, it proves us that there is something going on very interesting. And the thing that was very interesting is that we realized that personification was very, very important. So, and believe me, when we send the urbanization to the guy that paid, they're just like, they love it. They send us things. They're obviously using that for their Facebook page and everything, but they don't regret at all having paid that. We're actually showing them the characters, then the shot they're in, because they're actually acting in the pilot, and they absolutely love it. And not only that, but they advertise it. They say to all their friends, I'm that guy in the gang that gets killed at the beginning, whatever. And but still he's there, basically. One other thing which happened, which for me was unbelievable, as we announced that for $5,000 you could be part of the characters, a group of guys created a campaign during our campaign to raise $5,000 to be one of the characters. I look at that and say, that's totally crazy. That's insane, But for me, it proved me that something was going on, which was we were actually succeeding in reaching the audience of the crowdfunding. Because when something like that happened, you say, wow. By the way, they did not succeed. But anyway, it was for us very, very important. We actually did also deals with other campaigns, which word out things, basically. Some campaigns that were already existing or in the process, like with the video game campaign, where we felt the atmosphere and the ambience of the game was very close to our world, and they totally agreed. And so basically we said, okay, we'll give you all the assets you want to design a level that is just an Urbance level on the game. You announce it on your Kickstarter page, and we'll exchange your data. It worked very well. We actually also organized, I don't know, I guess you guys are familiar with Reddit. Well, Reddit is one of the biggest chat system in the world. You have millions of people talking every day on Reddit. So we organized a live conference with all the partners that are all over the world. And when I'm talking about all over the world, I'm talking about Canada, France, Japan, and really. And where the, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm a very clumsy guy. And we organized that campaign with all the backers, so they could ask questions to the artist, to the guy doing the games, doing the thing, and it was very successful because suddenly we realized that not only there was interest, but there was really a community that would start to be alive and defending. Another thing happened which was kind of very dangerous for us, but also very interesting. We had a big attack on Twitter by the group, I don't know if you know about it, the Lesbian and Gay Association, basically, and Transvestite. Because they said, how can you talk about a world that says to be able to have homosexual relationship, you have to have a virus that separates the men and women. I looked at that and said, but this is not the story. So I called all my gay friends and I said, what should I do? When we're talking about a big attack, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people retweeting it and everything. We're talking a huge, huge wave. And for me, it was a big danger because we were really attacked directly. The campaign was attacked. And I called my friends and said, what should I do? And they said, okay, hold on a second. First of all, you wait because any buzz is good buzz, first of all. So people talking about it is a good thing. And then you just answer the question properly and you just tell them exactly the reality. So we actually organized interviews in some magazines, some dedicated magazines and some more general magazines, talking about the campaign itself. And at the end, I would say, by the way, there is an issue. I was interviewed by the journalist that said, by the way, what do you think about this big issue that's going on right now? And I say, well, it's not an issue, we're definitely not anti-homosexual. Not only that, but they haven't read the script. Not only they haven't read the script because there's no script yet, so they cannot know the story yet. And it's obviously not our goal to actually be discriminative. So before they attack us, they should actually read the stories, look at what we're doing, and then they decide whether it's bad or good. And that actually worked very well. The thing cooled down, and then you had actually backers saying to those guys, stop what you're doing, it's useless, it's based on nothing. But the buzz was actually really there, and people were starting to talk about it. Okay, so now let's go back to the strategy itself, and I will go because I'm sure I'm almost out of time, maybe not. I'm speaking too much, I'm sorry about that. So let me go to the transmedia strategy itself. So the transmedia strategy is based on a very simple. I'll pass a little bit on the partners that we had for the campaign. Obviously, when we started with an idea of a regular 360 procedure, which is basically doing a derivative product, doing games, doing the TV series, and doing all the things that you usually do when the property works. And we said, okay, this is what people usually do. Let's try to find another way of addressing the community. And so the idea was actually pretty simple. We said, okay, what can we find that aggregates the whole thing? That when you dive into the world, you dive into a world and not just a property that is applied to various things, sometimes successful and sometimes not successful. So this is it. Let me go back to that strategy. The strategy, let me doing very briefly, is pretty simple. The core of the strategy is a card game. Imagine Magic or Hearthstone. I don't know if some of you people are familiar with those collectible card games, but it's a card game using the environment, the graphic, and which is a collectible game, a virtual game. So basically, you collect cards and you part of a gang and you fight more or less like I would say a mix between Magic and Clash of Clans. You're part of a gang and you actually go and fight to gain control of a region of the city. The more cards you have, the cards are getting better the more you play them, and the cards are, some of them are very rare, some of them are, so you invite people in your gang that have the great cards to be sure that you win against the other gang. That's the core thing. And then we said, okay, everything related to the environment is going to feed that. So if I give you an example, by the way, these are just mock-ups. These are not the real thing, but just to give you an idea of, we did that just to give you an idea of the property. Okay, now let's do a virtual game, an app or a game on a mobile, like a very classical dance battle game. You know, you have to time your things, and then you play against either way the computer or other people on the net. Is the more combination you do, and the more points you get. But if you actually very good at that game, you get special cards, which are the dance cards, that you only can have through that game, that you use in the card game. More than that, in comic books, we're going to do comic books, and by the way, we have a deal with a big comic book publisher that is in France and Japan and everything. In the comic books, in the actual paper comic books, you will have some hidden codes, QR codes or codes, that if you find them and flash them with your mobile or type them on the internet, you'll get special comic book cards. So using those cards, you will have better access, and you will only have them for that. Doesn't mean that to win the game you have to go to everything, but when you start getting into it, you hear that there is on the comic book there are cards, you hear that on the battle game you have cards, you hear that on the TV series you have cards. How you have cards on the TV series? Some of those logos that you have on the wall, if you actually read them properly, you have codes. On those codes, you will actually enter them on the internet, and you'll get additional cards. All that will create a lot of activity. So I'm giving you some samples of how those things interact. And not only we're going to use that activity, but we're going to use what we know works is that, as I said to you, on the Kickstarter campaign, we realized that personification was very, very important. So every week or every 2 weeks, we're going to do an interactive comic book, integrating all the activity, all the great activity that happened on all that, and using the best players as stars of the comic book. So the gang members that will be winning on something will be actually the stars of the storytelling on the comic books. Not only that, but people that are really, really good could have their own card with their own face as we did it. So you have the one card, which is me, and I can show, and then I can get invited by the other gangs because the other guy will want me as I have my own card. This is an example, for example, of one of the girls. This girl, which is a real one, he won. We did a contest during the campaign to say, we had people that are actually paid, but we organized a big campaign to say the guy that we create, the girl that we create, or the girl that the most buzz on the internet around the campaign will be one of the characters in the series. And we had like a 10-step game that you had to go through and finding how many people on Facebook and reaching that many sites. And so we had a kind of a search game, and she's the winner of that. So she's actually one of the characters in the series. This is also a guy that is one of the characters that paid, as I said, $5,000. These are the various partners. And oh, by the way, I didn't talk about broadcasting because it was covered before me by a beautiful intervention. But obviously, we will be going through broadcasting. So we're doing deals right now, mostly with the internet channels of the big, like I don't know if you know, but RAI and the BBC and France Television, they're all either way have already done it or announcing that they're focusing onto doing a special channel, but a real channel, just not reusing things for the internet. RAI already did it, and BBC already did it by BBC 3. So obviously we're interesting for these guys because the audience they want to reach is the internet audience and the people that actually go on YouTube and everything. So they want to have specific content, not only specific content, but content that have more with it. So they want to have content that we can. When I show you that big scheme, it's an open scheme. You know, all those bricks. You can add new ones. We can do like, for example, we're imagining doing an IRG game on social network. We could do a special IRG game for the BBC or for RAI and everything. So we could have one of those bricks of that big wall being specifically dedicated to the internet channel of the TV station. So they are very, very interested about that type of approach. Obviously, we can go to product placement. As you understand, clothes is very important in the TV series, so we're talking about product placement. And this is a list of the people we could obviously talk to. And as I said about that drug, obviously you imagine that Red Bull or some people like that could be interested about a drug that simulates orgasm. But anyway. After what we've been doing, our intention is obviously to extend the whole thing. We're talking 5 years from now, but just to give you an idea on feature films, maybe doing a special proprietary social network that is dedicated to, and then using that social network to do our additional crowdfunding campaign. Instead of going outside and give them the 10 or 15%, we can use, if we have a 1 million base fan, we will use our own people to do the next crowdfunding campaign. And obviously live events, concerts and stuff like that, because music is very important. Thank you very much.
Yes, awesome.
Wow. Thank you.
So,
Questions?
hay una pregunta, la podéis hacer en castellano y la traducimos. Si la podéis hacer en inglés, mejor.
Hi, I'm very curious, how did you finance the initial steps? So before you raised the money for the pilot, all this development of the strategy, design.
Well, we actually did put money on our own on that. As I said, the project came to me by the Steamboat team, which actually had been working on it for about 1.5 years before they came to me. So we're talking about 3.5 years ago. So they did most of that graphic design work. Then the cost of actually building up that strategy, we actually got some funding from the CNC. We not a lot of it, but we raised some funding out of various development sources to do that. And also what you have to know is that if you build your strategy properly, for us, we focused everything for 6 months on the Kickstarter campaign, because we knew it was a proof of concept. We knew that if we could reach that, we could say to the people, look, they're ready to pay. The average, we had about 4,000 backers. On the 4,000 backers, the average money was about $60. Sorry. So it means that the average money that people are ready to pay on our property is that, for a special occasion, but it's that. So for us, it was a proof of concept. And then obviously it triggered other things and other sources of financing. But the key thing was to actually use the Kickstarter campaign as a financing proof of concept.
Is the pilot still in production, or is
I didn't say the pilot is in production. We hope to show the first images in ANSI, hopefully. And by the way, we've signed a very for your information on the pilot. The character animation is done in Japan. We built up a team there when we hired one of the best character animators in Japan, which his name is Hiroshi Shimizu. He's the guy who did Porco Rosso, Princess Mononoke, Ghibli, a great Ghibli animator. And backgrounds are done in Canada, and all the post-production and compositing is done in France, basically. And hopefully the pilot will be ready in June, mostly finished in July. But we will have something for sure to show in Nancy, but we intend to deliver the pilot in July.
How long did it take to build the whole strategy?
About a year.
A year?
Yeah, about a year, I would say. It went through various phases because we actually, this is also what's great about crowdfunding. As a producer, I like to say that. I've been producing, as I said, games for a long time and animation for about 15 years. When you produce movies and animation, you do your pitch job for about that minute, you get the money, you actually build up your property, and then you give it to the audience. But you're never in contact with the audience. You do a few premiere where people say this is great or I don't like it, but you're never in contact with the audience. You're never in contact with the public. In crowdfunding, and you're in contact from day one. When you press the button, you have 200 people are sending you email and say, I'm not saying the word, but what the are you doing? Or this is absolutely great. But you have to answer everything. If you don't answer, you're dead. So you have to address the people. Not only address them, but you have to take care of what they're saying to you. And if they say something a lot, you have to say, okay, but this is exactly what we said about Netflix, about how they use information from it's exactly the same thing. For me as a producer, it was the first time. So it's the first time that I really had to talk to the people before the property exists to actually build up the strategy. So to answer your question, it was a combination of ongoing discussion with professional people and also dragging information, as much information from the audience as possible. So it's about a year to actually build up the strategy.
For example, for someone that is starting something new, that does not have the experience like Steamboat, it's very difficult to start. maybe they don't have money at the beginning, no, to produce their main chapter, basically, but they have some kind of muscle or sources to maintain the time.
Yeah, I think for me, the fact is the Steamboat was a well-recognized company and stuff like that, helped because it's easier to pitch. But on the other hand, I'm working on other projects where it's not so famous people, and people are coming from. So what's important is the level of creativity you put in your art. So if your art is good, it's good. Whether you come from this guy or this company or whatever, it's good. And good artists are just good artists. So you don't need that to actually create a property. But then what you have to think is, how can I use that talent and build up the strategy to actually use that talent and show it to the rest of the world, which is another story. But at the beginning, the cost of it is I'm receiving, I don't know how many, but dozens of projects a year. I only produce maybe 4 or 5. But out of those projects, some of them came from nowhere. Some people are doing their thing on their side, and it doesn't. It's not the money that counts at the beginning. It's the money that counts, obviously, to do professional images and to hire the right people. Now, for me, the money that counts. But at the beginning, at the early stage, it's not the money. It is the relationship about the art concept that you have and where do you think you can bring it. This is the key. Because every art concept cannot go to any type of market. So if you understand that, you're doing something for this crowd, or you're doing something for that crowd, then you have because then you imagine, how can I have access to that crowd? I don't know if that answers your question, but...
No, I mean, when you are going as a producer,
yes,
but not as a producer here, maybe you have more studio, something, want to make something new, and the time you need to invest in the product and the time you need to recover the money, you have to, because it's something to you that is done.
No, but yeah, as a producer, you have a risk, obviously. Yeah, that's the risk part, but it's true on any project. It's not true specifically on transmedia. It's not true for transmedia. It's true for every. When I developed an animation, I've been developing some movies for 7 years. It took me 7 years to actually from the day that people. I'm actually going to shoot a live action movie this summer that I started working on 9 years ago. So because it took us, very long time to develop the script, and we're not happy. So it's not a question of money. It's a question of how dedicated. No, it's also a question of money, but most of the time it's how dedicated you are to the content that you want, to make sure that it exists. But you're right. As a producer, you have to take a risk at one point, and maybe sometime the money will come back. Yeah, that's a job.
Talking about your strategy. It sounds like you can go in so many directions. So at what point would you personally feel that you're done with this project? What is the kind of end goal?
Good question. I don't know. I really don't know, because this is, as a producer, it's very rare that you have a project that rich in terms of... and from the first day I look at it, I imagine that it could be a very rich project. So in a project that rich, I cannot answer your question, because if it really goes well... if you take the example of TV series, let's say 7 seasons, 8 seasons, you would see that. But if you take the example of games, Clash of Clans, I'm sure people will still be playing Clash of Clans in a few years from now. So many years, but I don't know, I cannot answer your question. It depends on how well we do our job and how well the people will receive it. But I know when I started working on that project that if it worked, I would spend many, many years on it. But then it's different, because then I'm a producer. I'm not a studio. And I had a studio before, and I decided not to have a studio anymore. Now I actually work with people outside. And as I showed you on the map, we have people in Canada, people in Japan, people in France. So my job is to find the proper team and the proper people that works on one of the bricks. If I do it with the proper company, then it lives more or less on its own. More or less, we still have to make the deals and stuff like that. But overall, if that strategy works, we can have, this property alive for 10 years or 15 years, and then people maybe get tired of it. But I don't know, I really cannot. If I do my job properly, many years. You know.
That's answering my question. It was more like, did you start with a specific angle or not?
Well, the angle is determined by this is a good part about the crowdsourcing or crowdfunding. The angle is determined by two things. It's determined by the reaction of the audience and the needs of the market. So the example I gave you about the TV stations, it's new thing. I'm actually very lucky because I'm coming at a time where the TVs have a very, very big problem. And the big problem is called Netflix and it's called internet. And that big problem is a big chance for me. Because as a producer, if I come with the right thing at the right time, then if I come 10 years from now or 10 years too early, I'm dead. You know, they would just look at me and say, okay, forget about it. So I'm lucky. I came at a point where the whole industry was actually trying to look for new ways of financing. And maybe I had a good project to do that. But those two things about the audience and the market is driving me in terms of how to evaluate the strategy, basically.
Last question.
This is regardless of the strategy, it just crossed my mind. So the problems you had with LGBT population, did you later think about integrating, or maybe prior to that, integrating them into the script?
Yes, they are. The answer is yes. Now they are part. But actually, they were already part of the script. They didn't know it. But no. Actually, you have some transgender. I cannot give you too many spoilers, but you have characters that are actually transgender in the series, and you only discover them in the whole thing. So it was actually already integrated in the whole thing. But the way we're doing it and the approach is a bit different because now we are careful about the way. But in a way, we don't have any problem because it's still it's not political. We don't want the series to be politically correct. One way or the other. We don't want to follow a rule of that. So we're telling a story, whether they like, at one point, whether they like the story or not, as long as we're not insulting them and stuff like that, it's not my problem. At one point, to be very honest, it's not my problem. We think it's correct, we think it's fine. Some people will still hate it for this or these reasons. We will never have everyone. And in a way, as I said, we will not do a politically correct TV series. And for example, just to give you a spoiler, in the pilot you have a sex scene, drugs, killing. So we put everything on the pilot just to be sure that people understand that we're going to be talking about that. So so you know, at one point you have to be clear about the story that you want to tell.